So, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming along during your lunch breaks. Feel free to get stuck into your lunch while we're going through this, because you can put this on in the background. I hope everyone's been able to keep warm this week. So, welcome. This is our short webinar on how Beauhurst can help streamline the university HEBCI return. We know that this is a critical time for a lot of universities to be reporting and quantifying the impacts that they've had across their various engagements with local companies across the year. Beauhurst is very much set up to streamline part of this process, whether it's just understanding regulatory information about the companies you've been working with, all the way through to quantifying the impact in terms of follow-on investment, headcount increases, cash flow injections, that sort of thing. We can walk through all of that today. So let's get started. What we're going to cover in the webinar today, it's going to be about a 20-minute demo followed by a short Q&A afterwards. Firstly, we're going to cover what HEBCI data Beauhurst tracks, which you can find on the platform, both on an individual company basis and also for entire lists of businesses. We're then going to go through how to actually find this information in Beauhurst, of course, and specifically, we're going to be focusing with this demo on tips for streamlining this process. So that's going to cover uploading lists of businesses to collections, export templates so that you can quickly only export the information from the platform which is relevant for your return, and then how to find detailed transaction histories, so comprehensive lists of private investments and innovation grants into lists of companies that you've been working with, which we know that's a particularly crucial metric to make sure you're picking up on for the return. And then, as mentioned, after that's finished, after about 15 or 20 minutes, we'll have a quick Q&A at the end. So between now and then, any questions that come up, please do drop them in the chat, and my wonderful colleague Izzy will be monitoring those. This demonstration, this webinar, is very much focused on sort of top level showing you what is possible through the platform. We will be going through this functionality rather quickly. So if you would like more dedicated one-to-one support to sort of build any of this for your specific university companies which you've been working with, please do reach out to your support team member, so either your account manager or your client experience manager afterwards, and they'll be more than happy to set up a dedicated one-to-one session. And I think I've already got a few of these in the calendar with a few people who weren't able to attend today. So please do reach out for more dedicated support so we can help you enable you to get all of this information for your specific companies. So that's the agenda for today. Let's jump right into it. You may have seen from the email in advance of this session that we'll be basing this functionality demo around the information and functionality contained in our HEBCI blog. So I'll go through this shortly just now, but if you'd like to continue your reading or understand more about HEBCI returns and how Beauhurst can help, just search Beauhurst HEBCI in Google and you'll be able to find our blog in the first few results there. So without further ado, get out of this presentation here. This is the blog in question. We're just going to start here to illustrate the different data points which we can pick up on through the platform. And you can see those in front of you now. So why use Beauhurst for HEBCI reporting at all? Ultimately, it's because it can save you time and effort finding the information that you need and that is required of you to be able to report on the impacts that you've had. At a top level, this can just be things like regulatory information, which can otherwise be very time-consuming and difficult to source through the likes of Companies House. So things like SME status, we can quickly determine that on a company-by-company basis, as well as more regulatory data like directors, verifying ownership, percentage ownership of various organizations, and the key shareholders involved. All of this, if you're trying to find this through Companies House filings, can take hours, if not days, to try and source for 50 plus companies. With Beauhurst, we can export this data en masse in a couple of clicks, and we'll show you how in a moment. Then, of course, the big one for HEBCI, being able to quantify the impact that you've had with businesses months or years after your engagement. So Beauhurst can give you up-to-date and accurate information about company financials, including their cash, their profits, turnovers, EBITDAs, what have you, and of course, employee counts, including how that has changed and increased, hopefully, since you engaged with those businesses. Then, of course, those future cash injections and that follow-on funding. We will have comprehensive information on all private investments and transactions into those businesses, including valuation data where we can verify it. And of course, using Beauhurst, you can export things like innovation grants, which they received. So any interactions with Innovate UK. Having accurate information in an easily exportable format for all companies that you've partnered with is crucial to make sure you're accurately reflecting the great impact that you're having with the companies you're engaging with. Lastly, there's a few other points which maybe you haven't considered before to use as part of that impact reporting. Things like patents which have been received. We have that information from the European Patent Office, and we'll show you how you can see that on a company by company basis. And maybe any other broader reporting you'd like to do across the companies you've worked with. So understanding from company classifiers, maybe which sectoral specialisms you've worked with, or perhaps in the past year, are there any trends with the kind of technologies you've been supporting and having a strong impact with? This sometimes can be a bit of a finger in the air activity, but with Beauhurst, we're able to quickly isolate any group trends associated with those lists. So hopefully you can see there's an awful lot of information here. As I say, we'll be going through how to find this quite quickly in this demo for the purposes of demonstration, but all of you will have access to an account manager and or a client experience manager who will be more than happy to walk you through this for your specific companies. If there are any questions on that, please do drop them in the chat and we'll get round to them at the Q&A. But now we'll get into the platform to show you how we can actually find this. So jumping into the platform here, you should all be familiar, hopefully, with the landing page, which we can see. The first key thing to highlight is, of course, just this global search bar up at the top, which is the easiest way to verify key information on a specific business. If you just need to verify someone's directors, their transaction history, their SME status, you can just type their name, company's house ID number, or website into the search bar, and you should be able to click on their results from the drop-down menu. But for most of you, the key reason you're coming along is probably to understand how we can streamline and make this process as easy as possible for multiple businesses at once. I understand many of you might already be partway through or close to completion for this year's HEBCI return, but we can highlight any additional data which you'd like to export, or just for you to know in advance of any future reporting which you need to do. To do this, we're going to be looking at our collections functionality. So under My Beauhurst, My Collections. Here we can see that I've actually already created a starter template for my HEBCI upload. This doesn't actually contain any companies in it just yet, but we're going to add them now. And I was able to create this collection by just clicking the Create Collection button and following the steps from there. So as I say, we can help you build your custom ones on your own account for this, and it will look a little something like this. Clicking into that collection, we can then see that we're presented with an easy way to upload a list of businesses into a collection. So instead of having to manually find and verify transaction or regulatory information for all of the businesses, if you have a list of those company names in your CRM or in a spreadsheet somewhere, Beauhurst collections allow you to bulk upload those easily, and then we have a matching algorithm that will pair those to our dedicated profiles on the platform. As it happens, I've prepared a CSV file, which I have on my desktop just here. This contains a list of around 60 company names and companies' house IDs, which we can then upload into Beauhurst to quickly match and then export information on. So if any of you, in your case, it will probably look like a spreadsheet which you have in your internal system somewhere with the list of companies you're looking to report on. If you have a CSV version of that file, you can upload this accordingly. When you do upload that collection, you'll then just be asked a couple of questions by the platform so that it can interpret the spreadsheet which you're uploading. In this case, my spreadsheet just has two columns, the names and then the company's house IDs. Yes, this top level line is the row header, so we can answer that question there. And then we can tell it what information we have in each column. So this first column will contain all the company names, and the second column will contain the company's house IDs. If you're looking to upload your own list of companies from your internal systems, you don't have to have both of these pieces of information. It will work if you just have either one. But in order to get the best matching accuracy, we generally advise if you do have the company's house ID to add that as well, because it's simply a unique identifier. So there's only one company's house ID per company, and you'll just have the best match rate there. Clicking next, we can then see that that process is pretty much finished. So in a few clicks, we've uploaded a list of companies from my internal systems into a collection. We can see here that 61, so all 61 companies were correctly matched to profiles on the platform. But if you do run this upload, you'll see if any which weren't matched or there wasn't a clear match found. So then you'll be able to add those manually afterwards. Again, get in touch with your client experience manager and they'll be more than happy to help with that. So clicking finish, we can see that in a couple of minutes, we now have a custom list of, in this case, 61 companies, which will form the basis of my HEBCI reporting. Now that we've added them all into a collection, there's a few things that are available to us to allow us to streamline this reporting process. The most important one, which I'm going to start on, is the CSV export. So this is where we've just uploaded a CSV of companies into the platform. We can now export more granular information on all of them, including those key impact metrics, which it's crucial we have good coverage of. So for these 61 companies, I can click the CSV button here. And this is where you can pick and choose exactly what information you want to pull from the platform into a spreadsheet. I'd highly recommend against just clicking select all and then exporting, because you'll rapidly find you have a very large spreadsheet, which is quite difficult to work with. But here is my second key tip for streamlining your HEBCI reporting process. It's to use export templates. As you can see, I can click load template, and I've already put together a HEBCI export example. Clicking on that, you can now see that it's pre-selected just the information that I want to export as part of that impact analysis. In this case, I can click on these little arrows to see what's included and what this spreadsheet is going to look like. So for all of these companies, I want to make sure I pull out key regulatory info like their incorporation and cessation date, current company's house status, and then further information like locations, the location of their registered or head office addresses, for instance, and key contacts of people and directors. But the really key information here is contained within the activity and the financial statements, and that's why I've selected these accordingly. For all of these companies, with a few clicks, we can export full comprehensive histories of their academic spin-out events, any grants or private investments which they've received, so the total amount and number of investments that they're receiving, whether they've received a patent across the European Patent Office, pre- and post-money valuations, information like that. And then, of course, the financial statements is going to give you information on historic turnovers and number of employees. There is more information which we can export associated with the financials, with the grants and the fundraisings, which we'll look at via the advanced search in just a moment. But one final thing to flag is with financial statements, it's particularly important not just to get a current snapshot of what these companies' headcount or turnover looks like, but actually a historic report on how that has changed over time. And that's where you can really take your HEBCI reporting to the next level by confidently reporting with the data behind it that headcount or turnover for a group of businesses has increased or trended upwards, hopefully, over the past few years. So by default, we'll be exporting a 5 or a 10-year account of headcounts and turnovers, but you can also pick any other key metrics here which you'd like to report on. So that is our export template. Again, if you'd like us to transfer these templates onto your own account so you can export this data or edit it yourself, just let us know. If I were to then click Export CSV, I'd have all that information in a single spreadsheet for all of these companies. And for many of you, that may be where the HEBCI reporting actually has to end, and that entire process can be completed in 5 to 10 minutes or so. Of course, if you'd like to get a more detailed breakdown of historic investments and follow-on funding, then that's what we're going to look at now in the advanced search. Just before we do get onto that, though, I'll flag a few other aspects of our collection functionality which might be relevant for you. Now that we've uploaded these 61 companies into a list, you may be interested in clicking into a few of the other tabs on the left-hand side to find more aggregate information. For instance, our statistics tab will show you some aggregate dashboards that can show you investment trends or sector specialisms, so which industry tags, for instance, or which buzzwords are the most common amongst this grouping. And then the recent activity and news tabs function very nicely to give you a live ear to the ground of new updates and new events associated with these businesses as they happen. We know around the time of HEBCI, a lot of you might be resorting to picking up the phone and checking with all of these companies whether they've had anything new happening amongst them or if there's new activity or new investments to be aware of. Once you upload these companies to a collection and check the recent activity or news tab, you can see a live updating report of this as it happens. So you no longer need to go directly to the source to find that data. You know that it's going to be coming straight to you instead. I won't go through these in depth, but if you'd like to see your specific collection in this functionality, please do get in touch with your support team. I did mention, though, that we're going to show you a way now to get a more in-depth picture of follow-on funding and key transactions. beyond just the total number or the total amount of investments each company's received. To do that, we're going to hop into the advanced search. The search that we're going to run is a very simple one. It's just loading a company search where we're searching for businesses which are contained within a collection we've made. In this case, we're just going to use the one which we've just created. We can see that by clicking on this, we can load the 61 companies from the collection into the advanced search. Here we can see pretty much the same breakdown of companies from before. So why do this at all? Well, it's because in the advanced search, we now have access to these blue links beneath the number of search results. And these allow us to quickly switch this search to show us all historic equity investments received by these companies, or alternatively, all grants, so innovation grants received by these companies. Doing this in the advanced search means that you can get a more granular picture of new investments in chronological order. And that's, again, crucial to know if you're hoping to report on the kind of growth and impact that you've had resulting from your interaction with these businesses. Clicking on this top link, for instance, updates this search to now show all fundraisings into any company contained within the HEBCI upload collection I made. And now we can get a very detailed picture of the close to 500,000 private investments that have ever been received. And the value of this is that they're in chronological order. So now, because I've run this search, we can see that just yesterday, actually, Tokamak Energy received £98 million of investment. So I think this webinar is very nicely timed because I couldn't have planned that investment to be any better timed, really. So if this was one of your spin-out companies, this is a crucial piece of information for you to be aware of. And by running it through Beauhurst, we can get the most up-to-date picture, even £100 million investments, which occurred just yesterday. So I'm very glad that that's shown up there. We can then further export more information on these individual fundraisings if you like, but even just knowing which investments have happened and when can help streamline the kind of impact which you're reporting on. Going back, we can do the same thing, but instead of with companies, we can use the dedicated link to find innovation grants, and this will be looking across sources like Innovate UK, Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe, NIHR grants, for instance, a number of innovation ecosystems which we're tracking where those key grant investments, which are always great signs of future innovation, can be picked up on and shown to you here. Now it's the same thing as before. We're seeing all private grants associated with any of those HEBCI collection companies. And you can even see that we're seeing Oxford Drug Design in this case appearing multiple times. That's because we're showing all grants associated with companies, even when they're multiple investments into a single business. So you can get a very detailed picture of follow-on grants as they happen. So that's the third tip in terms of streamlining this, is using the advanced search to get detailed grant and fundraising breakdowns for any collection which you've created. So it requires you to upload that collection, but as you've just seen, it can be done in a couple of clicks. If any of you are particularly interested in understanding Innovate UK grants to a greater depth associated with the businesses you've been working with, I will also flag that we have a dedicated section called the Innovate UK Grant Search. This shows you all of the data resulting from our direct partnership with Innovate UK, where they send us all of the grant information that they supply each month. Clicking into this, I won't go through this too much because it really does deserve a dedicated session, follow up with your account manager or your client experience manager. But clicking into here and clicking on the rankings tab can just show you a quick picture, I guess, of which university or academic institutions are supporting the most Innovate UK projects with UK businesses. So I'd encourage you all after this to go into the search, click on the Innovate UK search section, and then find your relevant, the institution that you're a part of. Because clicking onto the link here, for example, University of Birmingham, you can see the full picture of Innovate UK activity associated with the companies that you're associated with your university. And just to give you a flavor of how deep this information goes, we can even click on an individual project and get a full idea of which universities or multiple universities are engaged, who's collaborating, when the project start and end date was, how much was up for grabs, etc. So some of you might not be aware of just how deep our Innovate UK grant information goes, and we can start to unpick this using the Innovate UK grant search. Again, I will go through this quite quickly because it does deserve a dedicated session if you're interested with this depth and granularity. But that close to wraps up the demo part of the session. The last quick thing we'll look at is a company profile to see individually how much depth we have on individual businesses. But just to recap where we've got up to this point, we went into our collections to upload a list of companies from our internal systems, which you'll probably have for the HEBCI companies you're looking to report on. We then exported key information and impact metrics using export templates into a CSV spreadsheet. And then we used our advanced search to get more detailed breakdowns of grant and private investment histories, which are crucial for that impact reporting picture. The last thing we'll look at is an individual company profile. For instance, I know that Atto marker are within the collection, which I've just uploaded. The reason being is that this can help streamline the process of, for instance, SME verification, people and ownership, and of course, more granular things like patent information. So just to flag this for Atto marker, we can see using the tabs on the left-hand side, we can get more detail about the key metrics which are important to us. For example, the transactions tab, this can show you just for Atto marker the 7 fundraisings worth 200K and the 2 grants worth $500,000, which they've received. Scrolling down, you can see more information, including their most recent grant or investment from August of this year. It's always maybe worth for the companies you're looking to report on, quickly checking their Beauhurst profile to make sure that you're aware of the most up-to-date picture in terms of these investments. I'll also skip over to the patents tab. Some of you might not be aware of the level of data we have on patent information. This comes from our partnership with the European Patent Office, where every 6 months they publish newly granted patents to UK companies. And this might be a new potential impact metric which you've not considered working on before. If a company you've supported a few years ago goes on to have a patent granted, it's a great indication that your support has led to future innovation that they're going to be deploying into the UK ecosystem. And you can get an overview of this patents data here. Finally, of course, we have the financials tab, which we'll be pulling through from Companies House to give you the most up-to-date picture of their publicly filed assets, cash, employee count, etc. Not all companies are obliged to file their turnover, so where it isn't publicly available, we won't be pulling it through. But you will know that as soon as it does appear on the likes of Companies House, it will be in Beauhurst too. And that about wraps up the demo part of the session. So we'll shortly be moving into a Q&A, so make sure you get your questions into the chat.